everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Life, episode 4. Today, our topic is energy and how energy is for everyone. So, really excited to dive into this. So much juicy fodder for conversation because it's a hard thing to put your finger on.
Mm-hmm. It's really a hard thing to put your finger on, and it's one thing that's happening everywhere and being talked about more. I remember when, like my mom or whatever first talked about energy work and how ridiculous it sounded to me. And I observed that, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just stupid people waving their hands and pretending like they're healing, right? This desire, this kind of childlike desire to be a magician and be like, wing, I healed you, or I did this, right? And, to be honest, a lot of that was held pretty immaturely.
Yeah. I feel like, even you just saying that, probably some of the viewers or listeners are thinking of that person. That they had in their family,
are that person.
Or their growing up life that was like the kind of family weirdo that did energy work and stuff. And it's, it's really fun to think about that and then like see how energy work is becoming more mainstream.
Totally. And energy work is just part of it. Energy, for me, is more of an understanding and an experience. And then the energy healing part is this other part of it, right? That sometimes isn't held that well because we can't measure it well. We don't understand it well. Scientifically, there's some problems. However, scientifically, there's some obvious things that are happening here as well. But to go from there to like a big picture of the conversation, right? So there's the conversation, and then there's the conversation. I feel like the world is at a time, what I call the energy revolution, and I think it's going to be just as significant as the scientific revolution, where we're moving from a place or any other revolution that's changed, the way that we think about things, and where we're moving into this place where energy is more understood. We understand things more from an energy perspective, and what I mean by that is that the material part of it is less important, although still very important, obviously. But the understanding the energy of it is more important. Understanding that things are energy and that energy governs, rather than thinking of it changes, it puts the world on its head. We've gone over the last lot of years since we started using the power of observation and the scientific method, observing things as material things and then seeing what they do, right?
Right, and calling that energy.
And calling that energy.
The output, like energy is something that we create instead of energy is something that everything is created from.
Yeah.
Or created around.
Yeah, rather than understanding the big energy, and energy works on pattern. And all this comes out in quantum physics, right? But people don't really understand it, and they don't really know how to apply it. But now that's getting to the place where, they found the scientific method way back there. People were observing things in Greece and saying these things, but that didn't really hit the whole way that the world operated until, hundreds of years later. And I think that's the case with energy. Like, we know that everything is a field of potentiality that is being expressed in the moment. That's quantum physics, right? There's no argument about that. But it hasn't made it into our worldview. It hasn't made it into the way we think of things because it's so useful to observe things and then predict behavior based on a chemical structure or based on, however it is that we can manipulate that structure. Then it's so useful to do that we just got so caught up into that. And then so we have what I think of, or I've heard called, naive materialism, where we think that everything is just what it is. And, if a lot of people out there is like, nope, just this is it. This is all that's there. What we can observe is it.
Yeah.
Because we can observe, right? Which feels to me, maybe you love that idea, and maybe that's how you run, but it feels myopic to me. I'm not going to lie.
If we can observe it and, measure it, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of reductionist thing that, even when you talk about, the in the book, The Secret Teachings of Plants, I think it's called.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about measuring a coastline and how it just depends on what you're using to measure it. You know, if you're measuring it from the sky, it's one measurement. If you're measuring it based on an ant walking along every little curve, and and that's kind of the thing with that reductionist science and measurable things, is that there's this whole field of stuff that's really hard to measure. And it's happening, and people are having experiences with it.
Totally. Not only that, but how we observe it affects what it does. So that's the thing about energy, right? Is it operates according to our expectations and observations. So when I observe things a particular way, not only that, with a particular mindset in mind, I'm actually changing the thing that's happening. Not in any big way, but in some small way, right? That adds up. With how we see the world.
Yeah, and you can say big or small, but there are actually some big measured studies of how attention and witness affects.
Totally.
Can have big outcomes. So that's actually how the whole doula field got started. They had people sitting in the room in the hospital with women having babies, just taking notes. They weren't even interacting with the patients. And they saw better outcomes, and they're like, well, what is this? Why are we having more healthy moms and babies from this? And then they, from that, discovered the power of witness. So attention is powerful.
It's really powerful.
And it really interacts with energy.
And what attention shows, and we're going to get into this idea of awareness in a minute, but what attention and that effect on energy shows is that is the thing. Right, the energy is the thing.
Yeah.
The result. We've been looking at the results rather than looking at the how those energies are moving. And that sounds simple, but it changes everything. Right? If we approached government this way, if we approached healthcare this way, if we approached everything from an energy perspective, it changes everything.
It does. It changes everything.
And it makes it all very different. It changes the way that we're gonna do it all. Like this idea that we can go to school and get an education is ridiculous. But understanding the energy, how energy moves through a person, and how education happens with a person, right? In the flow of their life and all the things that are happening in the world. Like, this is a big deal. The energy revolution is a big fucking deal, right? And it will change I think it is changing, will change the way that we think about everything, similar to how the scientific revolution changed everything. And again, the revolution happens in people's labs, in people's observations, whatever, in people's experiences. And you notice more and more people being open to the idea of energy work, right? Which is a whole kind of little subset of it. But and where that just becomes an obvious thing, where people just like think that, right? The last people to think it are the people who are in the old mindset. So, religion people were really surprised when they woke up one day and like everybody's like doing the materialism thing and they're like abstaining and they don't believe them about the God thing anymore. And they're like, what happened? They got run over, but they got run over very slowly. And that's the way that a revolution happens. From a big picture perspective, energy is happening, and it's a big part of the conversation because we're in the midst of this. And I love it. And I want to be wizard. So there's this is a thing that also fits my childhood fantasies, and so it's all good.
I think I'm reminded of reading this book, Quantum Physics for Kids. You just turned the Christmas lights on here.
For kids.
It's so great. It's so great because it's about my level for that kind of stuff. That's about all I know about it. And the page about the double slit experiment blew my mind. It changed my life forever.
Yeah, that's
just the fact that whether or not someone was observing changed from, wave to particle. I was like, oh, this is real. Like, our attention really is our most valuable resource.
And it's fascinating.
And it's because it's interacting with the energy in this powerful way that we're not really understanding.
That we still don't understand fully, right? We still don't understand the effects of that. It's anyway. I'll get into that. I want to talk quickly about skepticism, and we brought this up in the first episode. And if you didn't see that one, go go back and get the first one. But skepticism is a really interesting thing because I think it's the answer to everything. I think it's the answer for me to be able to talk to somebody that has a very scientific materialist mindset and totally we can work together, right?
Yeah.
If we do this in skepticism, I don't expect people to believe what I feel and think and understand, right? Because for me, energy isn't a faith thing. I'm not hoping that it is. I feel, experience energy in my body in a particular way, in the world in a particular way. That's different than what I was told the world was, right? It's a whole different experience that I'm having. And I'm open to that not being anybody else's truth. But then I talk to other people and it's exactly their truth, right? Like they experienced it very similar to me without me talking to them. So it's not a faith-based thing to me. It's an experiential thing, which means it's a subjective thing, but also correlated with other people's experience. But science would say about my experience, oh, that didn't happen because we can't measure it, right?
Yeah.
They can't measure what I've experienced in the energy field.
Well, and we, going back to that, like, your mom starting into it, or my mother-in-law, or whoever the, crazy witch lady in your family was, the approach to that was skepticism and judgment, and so, there's a healthy place for that.
There's a healthy place for that. You should be skeptical. You shouldn't just believe whatever people say, right? You shouldn't just, go with whatever person's, kind of like offbeat, wacky-ass worldview version of this is. You should dive into your experiences, form your own wacky-ass worldview, right? Yeah. Like, the skepticism says, just to review, skepticism says, I don't believe you. I don't believe it. Show me the proof. Show me the evidence. Show me the experience, right? And the part that people miss. I don't not believe you. I'm not going to discount that just because it happens to rub my biases the wrong way, right?
Yeah, I love
I'm
that.
going to stay open to experience, which is where science should be, but it's not. It takes observations, and it says those observations mean this, rather than being open to the fact that observation was limited and didn't take into account
things
its
that
connection
we might
with
not.
everything. We might not understand.
Which is funny because if you look at the history of science, they're always discovering new things and creating instruments for more and more subtle discoveries, and so it's kind of funny that there's like this no room for skepticism in that field, but it's a real thing that you come up against. I see these signs where it's like, like Black Lives Matter and love is love.
Science is real.
And then and science is real is on there. And that one always, like, I always kind of stop and look at that thing, and I'm like, are we in an argument about whether science is real?
Yeah.
Is science the new religion?
Right.
Like, what is that all about? And I feel like that's kind of a thing. Is like, seems like my religion is science.
That seems like a faith-based observation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Science is real, like Santa Claus is real or something. Right? So it's fascinating, yeah.
And science has been wrong so many times.
Yeah. So what's the reality there?
Yeah.
Right? And I would say that science is hella important. Fucking important. Yeah.
Yeah.
We should probably, do really good science.
Yes.
I'm pro science.
Totally.
And
observe, measure, take data. Valuable.
And I've had personal experiences, and I've seen the experiences of many other people where energy, something that those science doesn't seem to be measuring or able to measure yet, which I have every faith in science that we'll figure this out. But there's so much experience that I see in there that, that doesn't line up.
Yeah, science can't account for, hasn't accounted for yet. And so how do we play in that field? And I think skepticism is it. And that, again, comes back to this whole conversations with life thing, is being in the question.
Being in the question. And that's the energy, right? So it gets you right back to energy, where the question is the energy rather than being in that thing. The energy of science is beautiful. I don't know. I'm going to find out. I'm going to eliminate ideas, right? And test them, right? And then I might be always wrong. There's something else I'm not seeing. There's other things that might be affecting this that might make it different than it is. So science ran straight into the quantum world. Bam. Beautiful book called The Quantum Revelation, written by non-scientists. There's some out there written by scientists, right? And there's a debate on this, what that means and how that works out, whatever. But what we know is that all of a sudden we meet this idea that we're in this field of potentiality, and everything is that, and just it's arising every moment to meet our observation, to meet our expectation even. And that was wacky, and Einstein hated it. I thought Einstein was like a quantum science, but I'm reading this book and he's like, I hate this idea because it doesn't, he said God doesn't play dice with the universe, meaning he's like, things aren't just like that, but they are in some degree like that. You can't ignore those things. Quantum science and materialism have a very uneasy relationship, right? So it's fascinating to see how that goes. And again, I would love to hear from anybody who disagrees with that and wants to see that on a it has a more scientific understanding of things, and wants to argue that. That's the conversation.
Yeah, and I think the conversation, it's fun because you can even play with energy in conversation field. So, I'm, Great Aunt Marge, and you have a stomach ache, and she's like, well, it's because you've been playing with that one kid, and he's really bad for you, and all your physical ailments are emotional. Mm-hmm. And then you say, I don't believe you, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And feel into the energy of that space, versus Aunt Marge saying, tell me more about your stomach ache.
Right.
What's your experience? What's going on in your life? And then her saying, oh, here's something I learned or I noticed. Let's see if we can play with that. And you can feel there's an aliveness there instead of this like... how far can that conversation go? This is what's true, and you say, no, you're wrong. Totally. And that's pretty much how we're engaging in like especially in the social media thing. And it's funny because the conversation is dead after the first two people comment, and people are trying to bring it back to life without any sense of curiosity, personal experience, so it's really fascinating that even within the conversation, you can feel when something is alive and has that energy, and when it's just like dead and you're just like beaten up against a wall.
Totally. And we show up better as humans when we show up in the energy and with that openness. We just do, right? We want to have answers, we want to have positions, and certainty and confidence creates this energy of a thing, so people get drawn into that, and that's why we stay in the material rather than allow ourselves to be in the open place, right? And it feels empowering to claim an identity, to claim a truth, to claim a thing, but actually you're disempowering yourself because you're sticking yourself into a place. So it's this is the conversation, because we find that the answers that we've had in the world are maybe not that great, right? I'm finding that the answers that the world has right now for itself are, we live in an unsustainable, crazy world, and it just doesn't work. And we think that there's an answer. There's not an answer. It's about maybe getting into the question and then feeling our way through, right? Rather than having the answers and saying everybody needs to do it this way, right? That's why I made political, because the politics is all about answers, and they're corrupt because they use that as material to control other people with, rather than being really curious about how to make things go better.
Awesome. So, going back to that, I don't know why this keeps coming up, but the Secret Teachings of Plants, and I don't even know if that's really the title, but it's something like that. It's a great book. But he talks about, like, the whole first part of that book is about science, and his skepticism about reductionist science, and also the parts, the things that are measurable, like the electromagnetic field of the heart, for instance. So he talks a lot about that. And so what are similarities and differences between the like what maybe you would call subtle energy that we work with when we talk about, we're running energy or doing energy healing versus that electromagnetic field? Are there differences? Are there similarities?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an interplay of energy here, and subtle energy is an interesting thing. So just to talk about different kinds of energy, there's like gross mechanical energy, which is like a machine energy, and the body operates somewhat on that. We burn fuel, muscles, get that stuff, and kind of biological machine, right? There's electromagnetic energy, which is kind of it kind of like grows from that, where we produce energy signals all through the body through different chemical structures, glands, and then just our beingness, whatever it is that makes something alive, which we don't know, right? We can't make a dead frog dance. We can't Frankenstein things back into life. So it's that glow, that energy that is the thing that makes us move and be and makes us alive. Because we can understand mechanical energy, but we can't make it work in a dead body, right? So there's a field there of something of life that's happening, and we have no clue what that is. We don't understand what thinking is, right? We don't understand so much about how just life works. Even this idea of evolution, right? I'm fine with evolution, but we can't find the first cause. There's no understanding of what that is, right? So, call it whatever. There's a direction to things. Things exist and they don't not exist. It's really interesting. So I think electromagnetic energy is that livingness, right?
I like that.
Underneath that and playing with that is what they call subtle energy. And, every system of thought, of philosophical thought, pre-modern, has some kind of energy like that they detect, right? So let's say chakras, right? Chakras are really interesting because they're particular energy centers in the body that operate in a particular way. And there's a little node of nerves by where every chakra should be in the body. That's actual physical little node of nerves that interacts with that energy. And there's no reason for them to be there, but there they are. Bump, 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 bump. There's those little nodes of nerves, and there's this energy acting, but we can't see what it's interacting with necessarily, right? It's like we can't understand thought. We can understand. It's a lot like that, where we can see neurons fire, but we don't know what they're doing. We can see, information, but where does the information stored? We don't even know where memories are held. Like there's no place in the brain that has that. We don't process like a computer. We just process energetically. So we can see the energetic function of the brain, but we can't see the actual structure of it. It's a mystery. People like to tell you that they know what parts of the brain do what. And sort of. We can see the parts that are active. We can see some neurostructure happening, but we have no clue what memory is, right? And where it's held. So, and that's the same with chakras. We don't know, but we can see these little nodes and nerves, and isn't that fascinating? And then we can feel those things. And, here's the thing. It's just rational. I have survival. I have emotions, creativity, sexuality. I have power. I have connection. I have truth. I have insight. I have connection with whatever is higher than me. And then I'm bilaterally created, it seems to me, on that line of energy. I'm an expression of those energies rather than I have those energies to express.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that teaching that, you've brought that forth in a couple other classes that we've done together. And just the imagery for me of like my, soul or beingness or whatever you want to call it is this channel of light. And it's slicing into this rainbow. Because if you think of each of the chakras as a field, so I even think of just like root chakra is this red field, sacral chakra is this orange field, and I think of this vertical beam of energy slicing into that thing, and then it manifests like my body basically manifesting around that. Really fun to play with, and when I play with it, I experience things. Actual sensations.
And the problem of energy and subtle energy is a lot like the problem of consciousness, and the two are very interrelated, right? So consciousness is interesting because the cutting edge science says maybe everything's consciousness. That's the question right now. And can consciousness study itself? Well, there goes observation. Is a valid thing, because we're just circle jerking ourselves into consciousness, right? And it doesn't. It's like, okay, consciousness studying consciousness studying consciousness, and it's always affecting itself. So is there any objectivity at all?
Yeah,
is the question. And then so this is with energy. You experience energy this particular way. I experience my chakras. They're alive in me. I'm working with them all the time, and maybe it's in my imagination because I've learned about them or whatever, but I just have this experience of energy that's happening. And I notice when energy's off in my heart chakra. I notice when energy's off in my throat chakra. I can feel the energy there now, right? And then that's my experience. So this is like consciousness. Can we know that consciousness exists? No, because we're studying consciousness. However, I'm experiencing consciousness, and I'm like, hey, Zoe, you experiencing consciousness? Yes. So we're experiencing consciousness. Now, I have no idea if my flavor of consciousness is her flavor of consciousness. It could be completely different, like looking at the color red and saying, oh, am I seeing red? Are you seeing red? I mean, we could be seeing totally different things objectively, but we'll never, ever know that.
Yeah.
There's no way to know, because you're always going to perceive it that way unless you could like hook yourself up into my brain or whatever.
Yeah, and it's the same with energy, right?
But even then,
I don't know if you're experiencing your chakras the way I am experiencing them.
Totally. And you could never I could never download this experience into you because it's too complicated. There's too much going on in a human being. Too much energy and process and memory, whatever that is, and all the things that are going on are so subjective that's all we really have. And we can pretend and we can play with objectivity. I think it's very valuable. But we can't pretend like that is a thing that is an absolute trust source.
Right.
So then we are back into skepticism and the question.
Well, and here's a fun thing about that energy revolution, which I play with this all the time, probably in a more extreme way than other people, but it's because I'm very playful. And I really like to say what if. So what you just said about not being able to download your experience into me, what if that's possible?
Okay.
So some of the stuff that I play with is what if when we share DNA, when we're kissing or having sex, if that is actually happening on an energetic level, like you're downloading your whole experience into my field.
This is what Ram Dass said, right? So Ram Dass had experience with the guru, and he met this guru, and the guru knew everything about him. He went to the town, he had biscuits, he wasn't supposed to, he knew it. And the whole thing about the guru, how he says that he knew anything and how he could just completely understand people, right? Was that he was just in the field. He was just being everything. And Ram Dass too. And loved him entirely, understanding him, right? That's interesting, right? There are these yogic supermen, these yogic super people who have these crazy experiences, the autobiography of a yogi, all these different experiences that people have talked about that are really wacky like that. So you're right? Could this be a thing? I don't know. I mean, it makes me think of that. But I want to go back to answer your question fully. There is that gross physical energy, mechanical energy that seems to interact with the electromagnetic energy, which seems to interact with the subtle energy.
Okay.
Like, these aren't categories. These are ways that energy expresses itself in different ways that we can see. We can see the function, but we can't really see how it works. So subtle energy, I think, is a thing that I experience all the time. And then from there's causal energy, and nobody knows what that is. That's like existence energy. It's like non-form. There's no form in that energy. And so, we experience that as kind of like the void, the not, Space, but it's energy. Okay. But it itself is a field of energy, right? Like, because it's detectable. So we there's different systems and categories of energy, but those are the basic ideas. Now, we don't know what causal energy is, but we all experience it. We don't know what subtle energy is. I would say that everybody can experience subtle energy. And here's the thing. This is what I'm saying. Energy is experiential. I have taken a lot of skeptics, people, and like, okay, let me show you energy, right? And I had a Kundalini awakening. That's where energy that was stored in my system somewhere was released and all of a sudden moving through me in a way that was not voluntary. and I would shake and kriya, and all the things that you do in a Kundalini awakening.
Would it be?
And I thought it was crazy.
Would it be comparable in some way, just to help people kind of understand that idea, to being like maybe hooked up to some kind of electric machine?
Yeah, like all of a sudden somebody turned up the juice, right? And it's not comfortable because you weren't built. In my experience, I guess there's Kundalini awakenings that happen suddenly when people get to that place where they can have the capacity, but I didn't have the capacity, and so that was very uncomfortable. And I've worked with several people, this woman recently, who have very similar experiences. When I got home from that experience, and I was shaking, and I was still trying to figure it out, I looked it up. What the hell's going on? My body's shaking, like I'm looking for neuroses or psychosis. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe I've gone crazy. And I find that this is a thing. And it happens. And it's been happening for a long time. And it's happened in the East for a long time. And people thought, oh, it'll never happen over here. But energy's on the move, it seems. So it's happening more here. Again, this woman I just worked with recently, Kundalini awakening. And it's so much the experiences I have. Like she goes into Walmart, gets the same exact dizziness that I experience in Walmart. Because Walmart, for some reason, is weird energy. Sorry, Walmart. You'll never sponsor me, but the whole thing, or just different energies and different situations that she's had that are so much like that. Now, if that's my imagination doing that, before I even knew that was a thing, never having studied it, never having done it, maybe I picked it up in the unconscious collective or whatever. Okay, what's different between reality and our imagination in the collective?
Yeah,
right?
I love that you brought up imagination because that was totally like where I wanted to go next.
Yeah.
Because why the hell, when somebody says something's imaginary or imagined, do we automatically dismiss it and not recognize the fact that if you can imagine something and feel something from it or experience it as reality, that is something to look at. That is not something to be dismissed.
Right.
So I have a game.
Okay.
I'm wearing my sparkly dress today.
That's a beautiful sparkly dress.
On purpose.
You look awesome.
So I'm going to invite our viewers and listeners to imagine they're wearing this sparkly dress.
Mm-hmm.
And just notice what you experience in your body as you imagine wearing a sparkly dress. Something happens, doesn't it?
Right? Right?
That's energy.
I want to twirl and be like, woo! That's energy. It is energy. It's interesting. And, I don't know if the Kundalini experience is a collective thing that somebody's thought of and then, or
there's enough
whatever,
energy
and
with
then
it
there's an energy with it. Like, that's a thing I think can happen, right? Mm-hmm. If you've ever been in a stadium of people rooting for one crowd or being, or being at a music event, right? And you feel the collectiveness of the thing. You feel something going on in this collective field. Carl Jung, right, was a really fun guy, and I love studying Carl Jung because he was this very, very materialistic, intellectual fellow, right? And then he started like empiricist to a T, demanded empiricism, demanded proof, etc. In a field of psychology where proof is hard to come by because it's all subjective. Right? Mm-hmm. So, but in that experience, he started to have mystical experiences. He started having these crazy mystical experiences. And he wrote them down in this other series of, he had his ideas, which were wacky enough, right? He was talking about imagination and dreams and what those are and how that is, but from a very kind of still materialist perspective. Dreams are, he worked with Freud for a while and kind of bought into that. And then he realized that's not happening at all. These things seem to have lives of their own. And it's not just, wish suppression, desire suppression or whatever that's showing up in a dream or worries or whatever that's showing us as our psychological process. There seems to be structures in the psyche that are things that are like their own things, archetypes and such. And wow, that's interesting. Well, maybe that's just, somebody thought of that and somebody started experiencing like that and told these stories and then it built up in the field. Maybe that was there and we were created or showed up in harmony with those. I don't know. Again, I'm skeptical on all that. Did we build religion? Did religion build us? Or, belief?
Did we domesticate the planet, or did the planet
domesticate us? All these really interesting questions, right? Are we in Sapiens, he's like, are we grasses, bitch?
Uh-huh.
Because we sure have made wheat really plentiful.
Wheat and cattle.
Used the hell out of us, yeah, as a biological expression. Yeah. Anyway, so this this question, right, of what that is, and to start to look at the things in the psyche and be skeptical. And Jung was awesome because he took his mystical experiences and analyzed the fuck out of these things, and then that created an experience of someone having mystical experiences and somebody taking them very seriously and really working on it and seeing them, and then working with other people and finding the ways that these things work in people. And you know, the whole anima and animus thing come out of that. We'll do a thing on shadow work and what that is. And so many really cool things came out of that. But the long and short of it is that those things are energetic. Imagination brings focus, which brings energy, and it has a quality to it, doesn't it? Right? When I imagine myself wearing a sparkly dress, there's certainly a quality to that experience that's energetic, that's emotional. And is that not a real experience in some way? Well, we know it is a real experience. It's happening in my brain, you know? Is it a different experience that's not happening, you know? Yeah, I don't know. I'll try the dress on later and see. But like, yet at the same time, it's a particular you know experience. Emotions are just energy, right? They're thoughts, which then we store in a particular way, which then our experiences create energetic patterns from, and those energetic patterns are then we experience as emotions, right? Low emotions, high emotions, anywhere on the scale. But it's just energy that we differentiate into experience. Anyway, that's felt like a hell of a rant.
Coming back to this idea of the energy revolution, you know, we talked a little bit about awakening and consciousness and kind of that moment in your life where you realize maybe I'm not what I've been told I am. Maybe there's a way that I can witness my experience that's bigger or broader than what I've been told and what I've previously experienced. And I think that's a really, you know, summarized version of awakening.
Right.
And part of, I feel like, what happens in that process or in that moment is that field of energy. You basically internally have the energy revolution.
Yeah.
So now there's this whole field of possibility available. And so let's talk a little bit about what's it like to solve problems at the level of energy.
Okay, I love that, by the way. This idea that the energy revolution happens in a person, and that's an awakening, right? I think that's absolutely what's happening. It's happening over the planet. That's why the planet is having. That's why institutions are losing popularity. Right?
Yes.
Not because institutions are failing particularly, but people are seeing through the bullshit and not wanting to occupy those things the same way.
Right.
The money system. Nobody likes the systems we have. Nobody likes the government. Nobody trusts the government. Nobody trusts the schools. Nobody trusts. Like, those things are just held at an all-time low in trust. And that's why, because so many more people are having this personal energy revolution, which will result in that energy revolution happening everywhere. And it catches. It's a virus.
Yeah.
It's a meme, right? And you know, coming to your own body near you. Anyway, so you were saying.
Solving problems at the level of energy.
Yeah. Let's talk about this. This is a really beautiful experience. I took a course from Sue Morter, whose father was one of the first like energy people, right? And so she kind of grew up in that and has developed her own process on this, and really thought about and experienced energy in all these ways. And she talks about, for instance, very simple process of creating the energetic structure first. Now this is what affirmations do. Affirmations work, except if you think they're things. But if you're creating energy with them, and then not arguing with that energy, then the energy is a lot smarter than the thing. So the what I'm saying is the energy of I want $1 million is way more important than me having $1 million. Does that make sense? It puts me into motion, right? It creates. I read this book, this control heuristic book, and it was talking about how the next thing that we're going to do our energy will be shut off from action. unless the expected emotional outcome, in other words, energy, from the thing we're doing is high, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can say, I need to do these sales calls to get the $1 million, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I won't do the sales calls.
Right.
But I can say, I can hold the energy of having $1 million, and sales calls are part of it. Right? Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah, and then it's like this internal kind of like
Mm-hmm.
motivation isn't even my favorite word. It's like this
It's an
inspiration that moves you from within.
Yes.
This impulse.
Yes.
Instead of you having this like, oh, I want $1 million. Oh, I have to do sales calls. And it's hilarious, and I'm sure everybody's experienced this with something or another.
Mm-hmm.
Your system will do everything. Like, you'll find yourself like plucking eyebrow hairs,
Right.
instead of making
Cleaning
sales
toilets,
calls.
whatever.
Your
Yeah.
system will resist that so hard
Mm-hmm.
because it's that
Because you don't have energy towards the sales calls.
right.
So that's why solving things on the level of energy is beautiful. Now, I think this works biologically too. I think this is energy work where I have an intention for healing and I don't have a way necessarily that I heal. So I imagine some process happening, Reiki energy, universal healing energy now entering your body, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm affirming you with this, and you're like, yes, okay, universal healing energy is healing my body, and then your body has this intention and energy towards healing. So guess what? The things that it wasn't doing that it now could maybe do happen, or have the possibility to happen, right? So solving problems on the level of energy overcomes so many things. Not only that, let's say that my goal is to be happy. My goal is to be happy. I want to be a happy person. I am a happy person. And this is why. Because I want happiness. I know what happiness feels like. I've had enough experiences out there in the world that create joy for me. Right? And all I have to do is just like bring those in and then just double it. Right? This is the thing I always have too. You do this at home, right? So imagine the most joyful experience you've ever had. My experience is being surprised with front row seats to Avett Brothers at this concert I went to, my favorite band, My Religion, basically. And you know, I'm there with my family, and just sunny day, and the Avett Brothers coming on the stage, and my system is like, wow, life is too good to be real, right? And so I know what that feels like. You can feel it maybe even in my experience as I'm telling it to you. Your empathy naturally matches the energy of the experience, if you're open. And so it always says, like, to energy.
Tell me more.
To energy, right? So now I take that experience in, right? So think of your own experience, viewers at home, and then find it. Where does it show up? So that shows up in my heart, and it shows up in my low back for some reason. And when I think about that experience, how beautiful that was that day, and now I just kind of trap it, kind of keep it. And then double it. And then double it again. Fill up your whole body, down to your toes. And then fill the room with it. Okay, so there's happiness, right? I've just created happiness. Now I'm going to create, am I more or less likely to have experiences
Way more.
that are in the happiness? That thing that would shut down the things that I need to do just to be a human, right? Have less opportunity to shut down because I'm already happy doing the things, right? The emotion's always going. The expected emotional outcome is already handled, right? Beautiful. Now I can do whatever. Now, okay, by the way, it's not that easy. You have to hold that. You have to discipline. You have to, practice energy, solution. I can't just, fill myself with happiness once and make that be the thing. And always things get me down, and they should, right? We should feel low about things. That's part of it. Peter Levine talks about this, what do you call it? Pendulating, right? And so you practice going from low to high, to low to high, to low to high energy, because then your system doesn't get stuck like, oh, I need high, anything else is bad, right? And then it drops down to low because feeling that is part of it.
If you feel into that as vibration, the lows and highs, like you want the whole symphony. You don't only want the high notes, right?
Exactly.
And that kind of goes back to our podcast last time on orgasmic living, right? Because when you can inhabit any of those vibrations fully, like the happiness is almost behind that. right?
It
It's
is.
not because of
it's
that.
in it. Yeah. It holding that all. Like I wouldn't be able to appreciate that situation if I had not had situations that weren't that.
Yeah.
Right? That were frustrating and difficult or whatever, and didn't have that contrast, you know. So, but the thing is to move through the lows and move through the highs as well. But you know, I want to live on the front of the model, as Sue Morter calls it. I want to live in the happiness. I understand that everything has all the shadow with it, and I can understand that all, right? But I want to focus more on that high happy part, while experiencing and allowing everything else. Right.
So we did a practice this morning, actually really similar to that. Because there's some things that we have in our field that are feeling like they're wanting to be created, right? And so you listed off some of the things, and you know how would you feel if you had that? And it was really fun this morning because I was like, about how I feel right now.
Yeah.
You know? Because I'm no longer chasing those things to get the feeling. I'm just sitting in the feeling and noticing the possibility. And then I'm just open for like inspired action. If that's the thing that we're supposed to build, then like I'm ready for the next action step, you know, to move through me. And I'm not attached to it looking the way that, you know, my subconscious revealed it to me. Could be something totally different.
Yeah, and that's awesome. I mean, solving things at the level of energy, and it's interesting. We create neural pathways based on energy flow, and imagination is one way we can do that. We can create the thing that we want it to be, and then that creates the kind of pathway in us that already creates it. So then the manifestation of that is a thing. And people talk about manifesting all the time, really fruity things, right? And like, I'm gonna right? I don't know if any of that stuff should happen. Here's another thing about living in energy, is that being in energy means that I understand how I want to experience the world, but I don't understand. I can't control your energy or anybody else's energy or the world's energy, right? I can influence, but I can't control. And so I'm open to my energy, and this is the conversation, right? Because you're in the energy is in the conversation. I tell people your desires are sacred. You should have desires, right? And even the Buddha, this is a misunderstood thing. Even the Buddha didn't say don't have desires. What they said was use that energy towards happiness, connection, God, right? That's what they said. That's what the actual translation of the words, I can't remember, it's in Tantra Illuminated, read the book, but he talks about that this idea that we don't have desires is ridiculous. You know, get rid of your desires. You know, right? But your desire, you might not get your desires. I might not get the things. The things that we want to come to pass might not happen just like we want them to happen. You know, I'll put my will in that direction because it feels right. It feels like those things came through and they weren't the thing that I was intending to happen. It's just
well, yeah, and I like the way that like Matt Kahn, you know, gives a question around that. What if our desires are actually the future just revealing itself to us?
Yeah. But you know, because it's energy, we're not necessarily we might be misinterpreting it. So we could get to the place and we're like, well, this is exactly what I wanted. But see, that's okay.
Yeah.
Because the play is better than the outcome, right? How the play ends, I don't care, right? Like it's gonna end and something's gonna be done. Then I'm gonna walk out of the theater, right? And they're gonna put me in a box, or you know, maybe burn me and throw me over something. I don't know. But you know, you got the metaphor, but the play is way more interesting than the end.
Totally. So I had an experience last week that just cracked me up because I found myself living an exact scenario for Thanksgiving that I had fantasized about 3 and 4 years ago. Thinking that it was going to be the thing that was going to make me the most happy in the world, right? And between, 4 years ago and now, my actual desire for that thing to come to pass has pretty much gone. Right?
Isn't that interesting?
And then here I am living it. And it's just like, I can absolutely take or leave this experience. And it's so interesting that somehow it's almost like I knew that this was going to happen and I misinterpreted it for my happiness. And you know, there's potentially purpose in all of that. But also, I listened to this Alan Watts thing on cause and effect, and I highly recommend looking it up
Yeah,
because
it's
it's
great.
hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, can you ever really go all the way down the path of what makes something happen?
Yeah, you want to get to the store to buy groceries, but the wanting groceries make you get in the car. You think you got in the car and got to the store, right?
Uh-huh.
But the store got you in your car, and
Yeah.
you know that kind of.
And we'll have the store get there.
And have the store.
You know, he
Yeah.
takes you all the way back to
Yeah.
like the beginning
Yeah.
of, you know, existence, and
Uh-huh.
he's just like, yeah, hold that whole game lightly.
Yeah, right? Because what caused what? And you know, the level of energy doesn't demand any particular thing happen. So when I solve a problem at the level of energy, when I work on my happiness, when I work on my abundance, when I work on things that I desire in my life that you know that are there,
Mm-hmm.
I get less attached to the thing,
The
and more
out-
attached to the
outcome kind
being in the energy,
Mm.
and being in the energy then creates more opportunity to create the thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? However that shows up.
So I had a conversation with a friend recently, who's been, you know, going back and forth on career and what do I do and how do I support my family, and the, you know, the phrase that she said was, well, I can't be in two places at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, hang on a minute. You know, let's say we're in an energy revolution.
Yeah, let's say it's a new world, new
And
assumptions.
what if we could be energetically in two places at once?
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that I've been playing with my family. And so I'm bringing this up because this is a solution at an energy level that I've actually found to be quite effective.
Mm-hmm.
That I can actually imagine an energetic container around my family, and I can put love and intention into that container, and I can actually create a sensation of stability and love in my kids when I'm not there.
Mm-hmm.
And then on an individual level, I have one of my daughters who's particularly energy sensitive, and she's coming into adulthood, so she's a little bit more open to me, you know, my like witchiness being acceptable or something. Like her field suddenly opened to that being possible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can be in Salt Lake, she lives an hour away, she can say, I'm having a really bad stomach ache right now. And I can say, oh, I wish I was there, and are you open to some energy work?
Mm-hmm.
And I can literally sit here and imagine myself holding her, which again, that's kind of the thing. Her stomach ache may or may not go away. That's not necessarily the purpose. It's like, I'm going to be with you in this energy. And in that case, her stomach ache did go away within a few seconds.
Yeah, and you know, who's to say what's there? This whole holographic universe thing, where you know maybe there's just one electron in the whole universe, you know, and the you know who's to say what reality is? And also, you know, Gene Houston does some fun stuff with that. The quantum kind of plays with this quantum idea and says, okay, I'm going to practice the violin in my mind every day for a year, and I'm going to do it in the next 2 minutes. You know, what if I hold the energy and the intention? Because time isn't a thing. Right? We know that time isn't a thing. And so I'm just going to hold that intention and imagine, not me actually practicing the guitar, but the energy or the violin, but the energy of that and what happens. It's a really fun practice. You can sit in a minute and you set a timer for a minute, create a container for it, and then you put the imagination into that, right? So all sorts of things become possible here, but also, you know, it's kind of play. It's kind of fun. I don't know what the possibilities are. But, you know, if your daughter's stomachache goes away, awesome, right?
Right,
Here's the
yeah.
thing. And, you know, energy work is that way. We'll talk about energy work practically, you know, solving levels on the things that energy work. There's all sorts of ways to do energy work. And the most popular one is Reiki, right? So Reiki was the system of symbols and intentions and process to communicate what the founder called universal light energy into a person, right? Awesome, it works. There have been lots of really good studies on Reiki, but you know, okay. Do you see the game? Mm-hmm. I can do anything. And we invented Barney energy in one of these episodes. Barney energy work, where I'm like, oh, you gotta show up with the dinosaur, and you're like, the dinosaur's all healing, and then all of a sudden I feel loved and accepted by the world, and I heal. I don't know, like there's so many different ways to imagine and create attention, which then reveals energy. So when I talk about this, one of the things I like to go back to actually is the creation and the Bible. And a reading of an esoteric reading of the Bible says that Adam and Eve were created in God's image, but not the physical body. But then he says this weird thing: male and female created he them. Right? It says in the King James, male and female he created them. So both of them he created male and female. So energy is a polarity, right? And so he creates two people who have a polarity. Well, I have a polarity, right? That's what makes me function. I have a positive function and a negative function, and that creates an energetic system in me. And then all my cells run on that same process. From we know this is not, it's not controversial, right? I run on energy. I'm an energy system. I'm in the Matrix. You could be a big battery, whatever. Like I'm a big battery. I'm generating this energy all the time of all different kinds, and everything that is also has a pole. Every single thing, an idea, has a positive and negative pole. Everything that is a thing has a pole. So the image of God is not this flesh suit, which, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. Maybe there's a good, white dude running around, white beard up there somewhere. I'm totally down with that. But what that is full polarity. God is a full polarity. And man in the Bible, then, in that idea, was created in the image of God. And that means we have polarity. And we have a full polarity. Now, I show up with penis, right? And I show up as a masculine because, for whatever reason, I'm inhabiting that energy not all the way. Like, to grow into my energy capacity, I need to have like a one side or the other orientation. And then over time, realize that I don't have this other side of me, and then figure out how to balance that in my life. First maybe with a partner, and then maybe with myself, right? So it's so interesting. Life is an energy game. And what God really, the presence of God is awareness, and awareness brings fullness of energy. That's salvation. Jesus, then, is a fully energy expressed human, right? So he's the Son of God, right? So he comes down and he is totally expressed, right? And the cross is the perfect balance of light and dark and masculine and feminine, right in the heart area, right? Yep. So all these are ideas, and take them or leave them, but it's so fascinating. So, the whole Bible you can read energetically, by the way. You can read this as a whole esoteric energy process. So fascinating. But that gets us to the power of I wanted to hit back on the power of awareness. When I bring awareness to something, energy shows up in that thing. I can use my imagination. Can use my body, right? And awareness is imagination. So a great book, Shift into Freedom, Locke Kelly, awesome stuff. Awareness practice, super, super powerful stuff. Where you contemplate, one of the things is to contemplate objects, and then understanding that the objects themselves have awareness, right? And everything within energy also has a capacity for awareness.
I love that so much. I love thinking about that whatever I'm observing is also observing me. There's something that's so it touches this really romantic, imaginative,
you want everything to be alive.
Animation part of me.
Well, I think one of these, and that's why one of those that sings, right? Because everything does have an aliveness to us. And if you want to talk about God as a concept, maybe God is just everything in awareness and aliveness, right? And it's fascinating. Quick practice, and this is where I start off with a lot of people's energy because it works. This is a process from Locke Kelly's book again, Shift into Freedom. I highly recommend. And you notice your hands from the outside. Just notice your hands as you notice them, and notice that when you notice them, they do change and they do shift. And they might become more heavy or more light. You might feel buzzy in them all of a sudden, where you weren't noticing that before, right? Maybe that was there, but now you bring awareness, and all of a sudden you have energy. Now, see if you can feel the insides of your hands. So rather than feeling them as hands from the outside or noticing them like we do as objects, feel them from the inside. What does your hands feel? What do your hands feel like from the inside? Just take a minute to really sense into that. And you'll notice, I notice prickling, aliveness, sensation, and it's almost like I'm holding energy. It's almost like it's there, present. Like my hands are way more real and present than they were when I wasn't paying attention to them.
I also notice it almost brings or invites energy up through what, we would call my central channel into my hands.
Yeah.
So I actually am noticing this like a river or current of energy like coming up into my heart. And that's really interesting because it feels really similar to the energy of adoration.
Isn't that interesting?
So when we're adoring something,
it's like
we're inviting energy up into our heart that then we get to experience with whatever we're in adoration
It's
with.
a particular type of energy, and that's why, Bhakti Yoga, this idea of devotion to God, right? And adoring, and just expressing your, to me, God's a concept, there's not a real person, it's God's an energy expression. I don't know. I'm open to there being any kinds of gods, and maybe all of them, up there having a party somewhere. I mean, I think it could be pretty cool. I was really, anyway, never mind. But I won't go there. But this idea of energy awareness, right, is really fascinating, and you'll notice that happens with everything. Whatever you bring your attention to, an idea, person, concept, energy happens in it by your focus. And this is that quantum field happening. It's this my presence. And they've hooked people, they've done studies where they've hooked people up to monitors and had, meditators sit and focus on their hearts. And they've noticed absolute changes, right? Observable changes in the way that somebody's heart is by somebody being in the room observing the heart, right? And you can reproduce this all day long.
Yeah.
It makes a difference. So it's fascinating. Back to energy work. I can imagine anything I want. And I can bring awareness through the imagination. And I can do, I do this one called Wizard Awakening Energy. It's so great. I imagine it's a Merlin thing, right? And so there's different centers. There's dragon energy and Grail energy and King energy that you use there, and wands and whatever. It's beautiful. It works. Bankston energy, where he just cycles images of what he wants. He takes you take a list of things you want, like not altruistic, but the things you want, your desires, and you just cycle that list to your head, and it generates energy. And then what you do is you then take that energy and focus it through your hands, whatever. And he's cured many groups of rats of cancer through this ridiculous thing, right? And then all this weird quantum entanglement stuff starts happening with that. It's read energy cure. It's really cool, right? Really cool stuff there going on. To me, it doesn't matter what you do. There is no type of energy work that's the best work. It's to me, it's a game of awareness and focus and imagination and concentration and creating an experience of energy, which you can access so many different ways, right? And you want to create sexual healing, create sexual energy and put it towards healing, right? You want to create Reiki, bow to what's his name, Usuri.
I'm not familiar.
Anyway, and do the symbols.
But I have a few different little Hindu and Krishna statues, and I'll do a whole devotion with whatever that energy is, or I have a little baby Jesus on the altar right now. I can, I have a potion. Potions are fun because you can put energetic intention into the physical potion and then play with it.
Yeah, and and that's awesome. And magic of all kinds, speaking your will into the collective unconscious and having that will affect the way that things are. It works. Creating a right brain experience that is like a ritual or something, or a potion or whatever ceremony, and then that creates an experience in you. This is the energy revolution. It's about creating these kinds of things, however we can, to create healing, to create the right kinds of things. Can people hold this in irresponsibility? Yeah. Can they get fruity as hell about this? And Robert Moore talks about, he spent a lot of time with occultists, and he talks about people doing magic spells in their closet and if they don't do that, the whole world is going to fall apart, right?
Yeah, it can become a little obsessive, a little dogmatic, a little controlling other people.
And you start working with energy, Kundalini energy especially, and all this energy, it will make you It will pop you up and make you inflated, for sure, right? So, this is part of it. Part of the benefits of religion was that it supplied energy through archetype. Those archetypes are happening, and people think it's the thing, and that the God is real. But really, what it is they're getting their own energy through the archetype, through interacting with it. It's an energetic, capacitor, right? It creates an energetic experience. When I worship Jesus, or when I
it's kind of like the hand thing, right?
It's like the hand thing.
Like you look at your hand, and all of a sudden
there's an
the
adoration, bhakti kind of experience that's happening, and then now energy happens. So energy revolution takes it away from the dogma, takes it away from wherever, however people experienced it, and then said that experience should be like other people. It takes it away from the moralists and the rule makers into the realm of the imaginative, the non-dogmatic. That every possibility is present.
So it requires a huge level of personal responsibility on 2 counts. One, when you discover access to more energy, you're automatically more resourced than other people. And you have to keep that always in your mind, because it's going to be really easy to use that to take advantage of people.
Well,
right?
if you gain energy capacity, for instance, you can bypass your emotions and do all sorts of bullshit and not feel bad about it. It's the guru syndrome, and I think that's what happens. And you're going to say another one.
So on the other end, the responsibility is recognizing that there are people who are going to potentially misuse their energy. I think, honestly, we all have to go through that phase. There's going to be a place of immaturity where you're going to make mistakes. You're going to cross boundaries that you didn't know were there until you crossed them, that kind of stuff. Even the most careful of us are going to have those experiences where whoa, I didn't know that could happen. Being self-responsible means you are also owning your full experience. So that means you come out of a religion where everyone's always telling you what to do and they're telling you how to access energy. It's going to be really tempting to find somebody who has more access to that energy and just do everything they say.
Totally.
So how do you know if you're being taken advantage of?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Because there's plenty of evidence out there that it's happening, right?
You better pay attention. You better study. There's so many resources, and there's so much there. There's so much technology, what we call energy, technology, that has been a part of the world for a long time, and that comes from traditional things. And again, the whole guru system, or religion systems, monitored the amount of energy that people would get, and kept them in this kind of safe place, but. That's moving out. Those institutions are breaking down. People are breaking out of them, and again, this being held in attunement is really a big issue. We need more. We need to do this in company. We need to do this where people can tell us, "Oh yeah, you're getting, nuts with this, or whatever."
And the reality is, you might have an experience with a guru or somebody who's more energetically advantaged than you. And that might be how you learn that discernment. Because you get burned a little.
Yeah, you get burned a bit.
And you take back a little bit more responsibility for your own experience.
Yeah, totally. And we both had similar, somewhat those experiences. So if we can access energy and use energy this way, it creates a whole different perspective and, possibility. It doesn't happen. It's not easy. It's not like this obvious thing. Persistent reality and the laws of the world. Scientific laws. All those things, they all apply. But I can show you many, many, many times where those were completely ignored. I just read Gabor Mate's new book, The Myth of Normal, and he talks about people that got spontaneous healing because they healed their trauma. Well, what is that? Trauma is just ways that energy gets caught up, right?
Yes.
And so when you get rid of trauma, and we'll do a whole thing on trauma, you get rid of trauma, it happens. And so, he calls it emotional. All disease is emotional, he says, and emotional disturbance comes from mostly childhood trauma. Okay, so these people heal their trauma and get better, and the doctors are like, well, okay, I don't know how to explain that, but they're not even curious. Yeah. They're like, somebody gets well from healing their freaking trauma.
That happens sometimes.
That happens sometimes. this whole idea. But read the Gabor books. He really shows pretty clearly, and I'm sure there's a lot of debate on this issue.
So one of the things that I wanted to bring up, because this came up with a client last night, was he had a session with you, and then he experienced this peak in anxiety a few hours after the session of healing trauma, which in the modality that we use here, it's basically removing pain from trauma parts, right? So what happens?
An imaginative process that creates focus and creates release of trauma energy. Yeah.
So he's like, I had all of this anxiety, and I was like, okay, now I've been working with this for a year now, the same process, the same modality, and what I learned is that I was calling it anxiety because my mind didn't have any other way to frame my system suddenly having access to energy that my trauma's been holding for all these years. And so I felt this like increase of energy, and my mind's like, oh, panic attack. And it took me a few weeks to be like, oh, I'm just like adjusting to a higher level of energy, and so build my capacity.
And then when we get more energy and our system's traumatized, what does it do with the energy? Puts it into the trauma, right? And so then you have to face the trauma, and those samskaras have to be dealt with at a more rapid pace. It's another way to say what you just said, right? And so but then I'm like, oh well, okay, I'm feeling energy. Now you reframed it, created a different experience for yourself, and that's the healing process. That's what somebody has to do for themselves. And when somebody has that kind of experience, like the guy did last night, I think, oh great. It shows you it's doing something.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Like it's moving something. We just did an imaginative process. We did this little thing that was basically a conversation with your subconscious, and all of a sudden, you had 6 hours of the best, feelings you've had in the last year, and then you had 6 hours of the worst. Okay.
Something's happening.
Now we're moving, right? And it's crazy to see when every time I get somebody in a session, by the way, they're like, "Oh, I had energy move. I didn't expect to feel this, right?" That's because nobody told you this is happening. The ways that people have solved this before have been slow, have understood energy, and when you do, there's a lot more possibilities in the realm of healing and all the things.
So a couple more things. I want to touch quickly on big energy experiences, spiritual ego, and everyday energy, and how we can kind of maybe like pre-teach ourselves a little, prep for that, and just kind of like be aware of, in this process of like more and more people coming to this awakened or more energy awareness.
The way that you put it, the personal energy revolution, which is the awakening.
Yeah.
I love that.
There's this thing that happens when all of a sudden you have all this energy and you become aware of the fact that you're God. And then how do you navigate that grandiosity?
Because God is, if God is that awareness, right, and that fuller capacity for energy, then that's what the God experience is. It's instantly more energy. And, different people talk about this differently. Robert Moore's essential look at his archetype of initiation stuff, and essentially what this is understand that you're accessing this energy from this source that is your higher self or self, the archetype of self, and that this needs to be attuned. So reading some of that stuff, there's a lot of really good books and work on that. But doing shadow work along with this, so that you can understand the way that your unconscious mind is sabotaging you and will use extra energy to do even more, right? So,
I think another kind of short answer is, remember, when you get access to that big energy or divinity, remembering that everybody else is that too.
That's the biggest one. I think that's the biggest realization, is that in this awakening process, when everything is energy, you got to understand that everybody else is the same thing.
And so that's kind of a way to temper or attune that tendency for your ego to really want to hold on, to grab onto that and be like, I can have these big experiences, I can astral project, I can da-da-da. And suddenly it's like you have this whole identity around it, and nobody else is quite as cool as you. And you're basically not really any better off than you were.
There's a difference between energy and spiritual, right? So what I call spiritual. And we talked about in the spirit and souls one, right? So energy is just, your body will do it. It's not moral, right? You want to do energy practice. You can get energy practice, and you can create all sorts of experiences for yourself. In my experience, again, try your own thing, see what happens. But meaning is a different thing. So how I tune that, how I work with that, is going to determine whether I'm happy with it, right? Whether I'm using it to get more harmony.
All right, we had another little recording blip, and thank you for your patience with that. So back to this conversation
So professional.
Big experiences. You go into a container, you have this amazing thing, maybe it's plant medicine, or you go to a tantra camp or something like that, and there's this tendency or this pattern that I've noticed, with that, is that you can become a festival hopper or a concert hopper, and it's just like your whole existence is like, when do I get to go to my next festival so I can feel that again? And there's that energy dependence there versus how can I use that experience to attune myself, to tune my instrument, to increase my capacity for energy on the everyday level?
Yeah, and it's a really good question. And you've got to, in the conversation, you've got to have a conversation. Show up with your energy. So, you can go to a sound bath, which is the one I use as an example for this, and there's something about that is a passive experience. And someone else is creating this experience for you, or any music,
sound
right?
Bath me.
Yeah, sound bath me, right? Which is a pleasant experience. Or heal me, or anything like that. And the thing is, you've got to kind of meet it with your own energy. If you don't want to rely on anybody. You do not want to become energy dependent on anybody for any experience, not even a relationship. Man meets woman, woman meets man, feminine expressing, masculine expressing, whatever it is, right? And they'll borrow each other's energy. And that should happen. That's interesting. I'm experiencing femininity in this really cool way. But eventually, you're supposed to learn that yourself. Right? So
I love the word template that you use often, or signature. Like you're taking it as a template to create it within yourself versus I'm living off of your energy.
Yeah. I mean, I met people at the Avett Brothers concert that I was talking about that have been to 26 Avett Brothers concerts. Because they had a really beautiful experience at an Avett Brothers concert, so they figured they needed to be happy. They could use and honestly, that's fine. Follow Avett Brothers around, do whatever experience you want. But I think there's some in that of needing to be in that experience over and over again, and having that be my meaning. Whether I'm meeting that and integrating that into my own experience, where I'm using that as a template for my happiness. And sure, Avett Brothers come to town. You bet I'm going to go see them.
Awesome.
But I'm not going to need that experience in that same way. It's kind of almost an addiction energy.
Yeah. Like I have to have this in order to be happy. I don't have access to that feeling unless I'm there in that environment.
And addiction tends to happen on the negative side of things. Like I'm experiencing negative experiences, and so I'm going to create comfort and safety for myself in this experience, and that's the only way I can get it, right? Not being attuned and not being able to get over the trauma myself. But if somebody can create that for you, that's awesome. And then make sure that you integrate. And if this is how you can know if a container is honoring or not. If they teach you integration, honestly, I've been to a lot of events, a lot of things, and they don't teach integration, and I'm appalled. I'm like, not a word about how to put this in. Maybe a little integration circle or something like that, but not like, these are big, crazy energy experiences, wild. Medicine experiences, whatever that I had, and it's like no word, no guide, no process, no ongoing, anything. Not even like, here's some good practice, right? Which is so easy to do, and that just kind of says to me, they're supplying this experience. Well, maybe they just trust me that I'll figure out that on my own. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel it's tie into the kind of like, it's probably even unconscious on the practitioners, right? It's like this tie into the consumer / capitalistic kind of model of, I'm going to show you this possibility of something that your life can be even better, and now you need me.
Yeah.
And now you're dependent on that thing or me in order to have that feeling of better or more energy or whatever it is.
A container that understands initiation will help the people access their own energy. That is the goal. It's not to come and be to need that energy experience. I mean, again, people might choose that experience, and it might be great for people that exercise. I mean, I encounter those experiences differently, than I did. I don't need them, Before I kind of needed them. I wanted to get blown up and or to feel or to get an energy, whatever. But at some point, I'm just like, okay, don't really. That's great. And when I show up now, the whole point of this is to show up full and to be in the conversation fully, to be not in the where somebody's telling you what to do, to be not a disciple or a follower, right? You're in the conversation. You're one of the conversationers. Conversationalists?
I guess so. Yeah.
You're one of those people that are in it because you're dedicated to having that energy be yourself. Like we were just talking about how, somebody might have a really wild energy experience after a healing session or something like that. And to take that like you did and turn that's what I'm talking about. You're owning the experience, you're meeting it with your energy, you're having your own realizations about it and working it through on your own.
And I think a thing to realize is when you're at an event, you're not experiencing the event. You're experiencing yourself. And so that even that like growing the energy thing that we do and double it, my favorite thing to say at the end of that is, it's me.
Yeah.
I saw that amazing sunset and it just opened me and yes.
Yeah.
It's me. I'm experiencing myself with the sunset.
And there's this idea that our energy signature is just everything. Everything's in us. All the mountains, rivers, valleys, music that could be is also here, right? And so when we really hear something that resonates with us, it's on our path to knowing ourselves in some way, right? And so to take that and meet it with our own thing, and that's to me the difference of whether someone will heal or not. Are they willing to step up and integrate and own their experience rather than if they require me to show up all the time over and over and over and over again. Now there's things that might take years to heal. There's big traumas. That's true. But if the goal is eventually to put somebody in touch with their own, so that they can create those experiences for themselves, and then celebrate them with other people, and tune them with other people, and tune them up and that kind of thing. That's awesome. Yeah. But to be on that energy of needing, that's guru bullshit. I don't like it.
Yeah, and I was talking in the previous non-recording about practice and how we can become dependent on practice for our happiness, right?
Right.
Oh, I didn't do my meditation this morning, therefore I will have a bad day, right? And so I had this a couple weeks ago, this fun little experience with the universe where it was like, I think I might need to like up my game with practice and discipline. And seriously, for like the next solid week, there was no moment that I could have engaged in practice in an honoring way, because it would have been neglecting something else in my field that was actually the most honoring thing to give my attention to. And so I had this fun experience of just kind of laughing at that. Like literally I would be like, oh, I have 30 minutes. I can sit and do my Kriya practice. And my son would text me and he had a big experience at school and needed a ride home, right? Of course I'm going to go. And so I can take my practice into every single experience. Every single interaction starts to become my practice. Can I stay open? Can I stay full? And when I don't stay full, can I be in conversation with that? And less reaching out to other, sources for that.
Yeah, and it's not all high, It's not all high. It's lows, and I don't know. I think we still have the police words talking about the pendulation, and we're moving through low and moving through high. This is the conversation, right? And we want to experience as much here and focus on the up, but just the conversation requires all sorts of experience, right?
Yes.
That's that movement of energy is movement. It won't static. It wouldn't be noticed or present. I mean, that's one of the assumptions, the basic assumptions of the energy revolution that materialism doesn't have. Materialism says if I have this certain security, safety, money, presence, relationship, then I'm happy, right?
Yeah.
And of course, it doesn't work because as soon as it's achieved, it's energyless. It's a husk, and it's a corpse. Material possessions are instantly corpses of energy that left, because that's not the point, right? The getting is way more interesting than the having, and the conversation is way more interesting than the answers. And so that's part of that.
So
too.
energy is the conversation.
Energy is the conversation.
And the conversation is energy.
And the conversation.
So what's
is energy.
actually happening when we have a conversation is there's energy. There's this tension.
And in fact, the only real conversation is the energy.
Mm-hmm.
The words are just a carrier of energy.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it's a sort of inefficient way that we developed to create specific understanding, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it helps. Integration often, because of that, involves words and writing or conceptualizing in some way, which isn't the real thing.
Yeah, and it's in a way that it's kind of like this commonality, right? Like you can portray words in a way that's some common ground, as opposed to like I'm experiencing energy and I'm having an absolutely unique experience, but somehow I want to share what I'm experiencing. So we use words, we use imagery, and that's a beautiful part of it.
But we're always having a conversation that we don't put in words. We are always having that conversation. We are always having that conversation. That conversation is always happening. The energy, the feel, the vibe, whatever, and we're both receiving and giving that. So it's not as clear and it's not as specific, but it is there always. And that conversation idea is just the tension of everything with everything else, and in existence. So the energy really is the conversation. The words are the way that we can just kind of tune it up and make it present and bring it a little bit over the surface, so that it can be seen a little bit. And so then when it comes back into the surface, it then is better understood and felt, and all those things, right? So the podcast is funny because we can't really do an energy cast. I guess we could. We just sit here and smile at you. This is the conversation. But smolder and laugh and whatever. But long live the conversation, and this is the conversation, and energy is essential to it. This is the way that I think the world is moving, and it's essential for us to become more energy aware, and then experience our own energy. And this is awakening. You want more information on that, or you want to figure out how to do that for yourself, call either of us, and
totally.
we help people with this process. And a lot of it's healing trauma, a lot of it's a lot of different things. So join the conversation. We're probably not going to release the Mighty Networks until I think New Year, or maybe just after Christmas. I don't know. We don't know. It's still a conversation. They're putting some new updates and stuff, so we don't want to create it and then have to recreate it. So we're kind of on pause. We do have a Facebook group, so join that. We're doing events. There's things going on all the time, and I'm gonna start doing group healings once a month in the conversation for free. We're anything that you can bring to the conversation, bring it.
Yes,
and we'll bring ours. And we appreciate you, and thank you if you made it to this far in the podcast. Then you're my hero. And I guess that's it.
Yeah.
So have a good one, whenever you are. Honored to share this time.
Yes. Thank